In the series of Empower the Determined, today's topic is something very, very close to my heart, and it is depression, symptoms, and solution. And who could be better speaker on this topic than our own dear Dr. Sonakshi? Dr. Sonakshi is not only a psychologist, but she is an amazing personality. And today I take this privilege to introduce Dr. Sonakshi to you all. Of course, currently you all know that she is working as an associate registrar at Amity University in Dubai. But she is the soul and soul person to create this Department of Psychology and Behavioral Sciences in 2016 at Amity University. And she's been serving as the head of academics of Psychology Department and Humanities and Arts and Applied Sciences. Dr. Sonakshi is a hardcore academician. She's been doing for 11 years teaching the students of undergraduates and postgraduates in the field. And not only that, she's published plenty of research papers and not only presented them, but also published them in various national and international journals. I am extremely delighted to have such a personality with us today. She has done various training programs, and these training programs include she has conducted training for Sharjah tourism. She has done for DIVA, for paramilitary training for India. She's also trained the prison inmates in Tihar jail in India. She has trained various sessions at higher colleges of technology of Dubai, training, research, and she has guided many students in their dissertation and been a co-guide for the PhD scholars. Over and above many of such things, she also has plenty of awards for her great work she has been doing in the field. She's been a recipient of the People Choice Award for Excellence in Mental Health at the World Health Awards in 2021. She's the recipient of Great Indian Women Leader category for Education Award. She has received a Middle East Women Leaders Award in 2020. She's been an Academic Leadership Award in 2019. She's been a recipient of the Best Paper Presentation Award at the International Conference in 2019. She's been a recipient of an Outstanding Achievement for Autism Awareness. She is amazingly talented person, and believe it, I'm sure that this session is going to be mind-blowing session of learning for you all. She is being the chief organizer and the author for the mega university events are connected to the mental health, and she's also published a book which has been on counseling, and this is a counseling interventions for millennials, and it is published in 9 languages by the Lambert publication. Sonakshi, we are really delighted to have you with us this evening. So much for accepting our request to be a part of this. I think Miss Saika, do we have Sonakshi ma'am with us, or we lost Dr.
No, I'm very much
Thank you
with you.
so much for being with us. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sonakshi.
Thank you so much. It's like coming back home. So EduScan is family.
We really believe that you're a part of us, Sonakshi.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
And now I would want Miss Saika to see that you pin Dr. Sonakshi, because I'm not able to see Dr. Sonakshi on screen. So can you please do the needful? Now, talking about depression symptoms and solutions. Very, very dear topic, symptoms and solutions. Sonakshi, tell us, what is depression?
Much more dangerous than actually people believe it to be. Depression is, when Saika told me that we need to talk about depression, I had so many thoughts in my head. One of the predominant one was, what is the basic difference between sadness and depression? I'd like to start from there for people to actually know what depression is in general. So Primarily, any mood can be seen in a normalcy of situation. Slightly lesser would be sadness, which we often now these days interchangeably think of as depression. But sadness, normalcy, sadness, depression has a lot of difference. The two primarily, primarily different things about sadness and depression is that depression stays longer than sadness. Sadness comes and goes, but depression continues to stay if it is untreated. And number two, when it comes to depression, it's a prolonged, persistent, sadness of mood. It's a completely mood-related disorder, and so we assume that it has more depth and intensity than a sadness has. People could be sad that they're losing someone in life. People could be sad that they probably have a broken something, a broken family, broken home. But the intensity of feelings which they sometimes attach to themselves, and if it goes on persistently for some time or the longer, then we assume that to be, or we believe that to be, a depressive phase, which is not
Rightly
something like that.
said.
Yeah.
Rightly said, Dr. Sonakshi, that something which stays there for very, very long. And normally, the person who's going through this feeling of sadness, it can happen because of a loss of a loved one or loss of a loved relationship. But then the person finds difficult to handle it by self. Sadness is something where you are able to help yourself and able to come out of it. Now, what are the signs of depression, Dr. Sonakshi?
Persistent sadness, persistent low mood is one of the major signs of depression. So, whenever we talk about depression, we need to see it in a format that it is not something, it's not like chikungunya, it's not like a chicken pox that erupts on your face and you're able to identify it. It's an absolutely gradual process. It's like somebody walking into your house, barefoot. Sometimes you don't really realize that they're in your house. So depression is like that, very gradual a process. You will gradually find someone who would be, there would be a loss of interest in the activities, regular activities that they have been doing. There would be a persistent sadness, there would be pessimism, there would be an underlying pessimism, and gradually depression has a beautiful uncanny ability to go from helplessness to hopelessness. That's the sign. So you will understand yourself that everything that you do, you will find yourself feeling very helpless about it. I don't know, I can't really do this, I don't really understand this. And that helplessness eventually goes on to become worthlessness. That's when you start to diminish your own value in your own eyes. It's like saying, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about myself, I'm not sure if I'm even capable to play cricket, for example, if that's one of your hobbies. So going from I cannot play cricket to today I am not a good cricketer to actually saying I have no, hope for cricket in the future. So it's a very gradual process from where we go to from helplessness to hopelessness, and hopelessness is where depression goes severe to moderate, moderate to severe, in which chances of suicide are way higher in comparison to the stages of helplessness. Therefore, as psychologists, we always believe that if you have someone which is an unidentified emotion, a sadness, a prevailing sadness, please knock on the door of a psychologist and speak to them, because prevention is much better than cure in depression.
Totally agree to you, Dr. Sonakshi. So beautifully you said that
Thank you.
hopeless and helpless initiates with helplessness, but certainly gradually drags you to the corner of hopelessness. And believe it, initially it is a
Hmm.
stress which is unmanaged for a very, very long time. Then it becomes anxiety. And when you're not able to handle this anxiety, you really fall into clinical depression.
Yeah.
I will like to add on a beautiful example for lay people to understand. Say today you decide to go on the top of a Jebel Jazz. And the moment you reach on the top of a mountain, you say, wow, it's amazingly windy. It's so nice. I'm so happy about it. And the moment you step out of your car, you feel this wind is too harsh on you. You're losing your grounds. And with the swing of the wind, you go to the left, and the swing of the wind, you go to the right. Now, you need to take a call on it. So, stress is a is a situation where you start losing your ground. As Dr. Sonakshi rightly said, you start losing interest in the
Yes.
areas you love originally. So if you're a cricketer and you love cricket, you no longer enjoy that. If you love to spend time with your family, you no longer enjoy it. You like to be lonely, you want to be by yourself, you don't enjoy the company of people. And now when you're swinging with this, and suddenly with one thrush of the air you are hanging on a cliff with your tight hand, this is anxiety. Now down deep is a valley where you may fall, but you need support to be pulled out of it. Now you're holding tight and you're shouting for help, you're seeking help. But some of us would not do that. We're struggling to climb back and go up the mountain, but you're not able to because your whole body is literally hanging up there. And that is a stage of anxiety. But your grip cannot be tight for an unlimited time. And if it remains unhelped, Dr. Sonakshi rightly said, pick up a phone and call a psychologist, speak to a professional, seek your intervention at that very moment. Otherwise, slowly, your grip will start loosening up and you will fall
Mm.
into the deep valley of clinical depression. And once you are into a stage of a clinical depression, we have a lot of lovely questions for our dear expert Dr. Sonakshi today to ask what happens then. So come on, Dr. Sonakshi, please share with our audience what are the signs of depression? How do we really say that the person is really falling into depression, and what causes this depression over and above? I think is very important for our dear audience to understand.
So I'll pick up from where you said, because it's amazing how you said that after feeling a certain things, you start to feel anxiety. And so what do you do when you're anxious? So a person like me who's an extrovert, if I'm sad about something, what will I do? I'll gather all the people who are close to me, often talk about, something which is not right in my life. And over again, I'll try and repeat the same context to 10 people. And then I'll get a feedback from them saying, you keep crying over the same thing. I just hope everything is okay with you. That's a sign. Now, number two, there would be introverts. And now, introverts are usually people who don't like to speak to many people about their concerns, but they know when something that they're swallowing too hard and they're isolating themselves more and they're not engaging in things that they used to engage in is exactly the sign of depression. So, there is no particular way. It, depression is individualistic in nature. It's not one size fit all. It will affect people in different manners. So some people would be affected either in a manner that they will find themselves having this constant underlying anxiety, constant low mood, fidgetiness. It's like I don't like, to do that. I have slept for 10 hours at night, but I still don't feel like getting up in the morning and doing the work. So these are basic ways in which you can understand that there is something which is dwelling in you, which is making you uncomfortable, right? For example, if you've eaten something wrong, you have this bitter taste in your mouth and it stays, and you do everything possible to eradicate that bitter taste in your mouth. Imagine the bitter taste in your mind. It's stuck. It is stuck there, that there is something which is not right about myself. One of the beauties of depression is that it's a neurotic concern. It's not a psychotic concern. People are not an out of touch they absolutely know that they're feeling a certain thing which is alien to their own body, right? So that's amazing bit about depression. I have so many students in the university who would sometimes come and say, I don't think I'm feeling well. And I'll ask them, oh, for how long? Maybe about 10, 15 days back. It just, I mean, there's something which is off about me. Great. Is it homesickness? Is it a group of friends who've been not been talking to you? Is it something else that's bothering you? Why don't we talk about it? So if we see, duration is very important. Sadness, like I said, has a limited duration. You can be sad for a while and then anything can replace. It's like a child who's crying in crying for a toy. You give him a toy, the child is okay. That crying episode is sadness for that period of time. But for depression, has the capacity to stay for 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then eventually people around you will start to speak that you don't look well. If they do that, seek help, because sometimes our audiences are able to see us better. It's like you're not in character. So that's very important. Now, causes of depression are very. Some people would, most psychologists and researchers would say it's basically the faulty mood pattern in your brain. It's the chemical imbalances in your brain. Some will say it's genetic vulnerabilities. Yeah, so people who have genes which are vulnerable towards mental illnesses can escalate that in you. Some would say it's stressful life events. It's a break of events. Some will, there could be many reasons for depression. The idea is, imagine you're driving a car and that car is you as a person right now. It could be hit by you, it could be hit by the other person. But the response to the hit determines how you want to conduct it. So, for example, a person who's depressed would swallow the things and say, this is deemed to happen to me. This is something which will happen to me. I knew I would step out and I would be hit. Whereas someone who's probably more in command of their own mind would think more like a suggestion based, that what am I supposed to do now? What is supposed to be the next act? In fact, another segment. So, for example, like I said, normalcy of mood, sadness, depression. The third segment to that is dysthymia. Now, dysthymia is a situation where between depression, the depression escalates to such a severe mode that dysthymic reactions is when your motor activity goes zero. So even if you're sitting in a room and you can see that there is fire in the room, you don't have the capacity to get up and walk out. That massive is the chemical imbalance in the brain. So there are people who can see, and you will rescue them and you will ask them ki, didn't you see that there was fire in that room? And the response the person will give was, yes, there was fire in the room, but I didn't have the energy to get up. Now, energy, you look like a fairly reasonably, well-shaped, well-rounded man who can actually run out of the room. But mentally, you're paralyzed in that situation. So, depression is very gripping in nature. It's in-depth in nature. It stays longer. It's persistent. It's parasitic in nature. It grows on you.
Very,
So,
very rightly said,
yeah,
Dr.
there are many reasons for it. It could be possibly the causes could range from your personal to professional to social, sometimes environmental, sometimes temperamental issues. So there are various dimensions in which it is.
Very rightly said, Dr. Sonakshi, that there can be n number of causes for your depression, and depression is something which should not be ignored. You and you yourself need to take care of your own emotional well-being, mental well-being. That's very significant, because if you will give up on yourself, then nobody under the sun will come to help you, and nobody can help you actually. The fact remains that it is purely your personal disposition, and every moment you have alarming signals. It's not that you do not get the signals. You get the signals, but you keep ignoring them. You
Yeah.
think you are in no position to support. As rightly said by Dr. Sonakshi, it can, it starts in up here in your mind, but it regulates your whole body, and your body is a servant of your mind. So if your mind collapses, the body collapses automatically. So it's not the other way out. A lot of us think that the body leads to mind, but the mind is the master, and we must take care of our mind in all conditions. So whether we are depressive or we are not, but we must give it an importance. And in today's era, where we have this pandemic around us, everything is changing. Schools have changed, teaching, learning has changed, socioeconomic things have changed, total economy of the countries are thrashed. In this condition, very important is, see, fact is a fact. Reality is a reality. But always try, I always talk about ABC and AUC, all beyond control and all under control. And instead of focusing all beyond control, which is ABC, if you just change your focus and you focus on AUC, you will see a lot more of a difference. The things which are under your control, where you can make a difference. Dr. Sonakshi, tell us that is it possible to get over depression?
100% it is possible. The idea, see, at the end of the day, there has to be a measure for something. When there is cure for as big as cancer, there is cure for mental illnesses as well. There are two very important aspects in that. One, I love the word when you say don't ignore depression. Most of the people, in fact, I was before this lecture reading out some research from Harvard, And it said the Harvard Health Medicine says 65% of the population, 65% of people over 65 years of age who fall into geriatric format of depression, which is old age or retired, population, they actually don't treat depression because they think they have lived such a significant life, this is nothing they'll manage, and they end up being more and more depressed about this situation. So yes, I understand that people here, or people in general, have excellent social support systems, and they can manage to, something like sadness, but prevailing sadness which is crippling you in some way or the other needs to be understood. So if it is depression, and if it is diagnosed as depression, then there are two very important methods. Reach out to the person nearby you. You can reach out to a psychologist. They will be able to guide you, they'll be able to identify you. There are times the psychologists understand that this is a moderate to severe format of depression, which requires, and it has had chemical imbalances, so it requires the attention of a psychiatrist. And medication is an important aspect, which is antidepressants. But remember one thing: you have normalcy of mood, depression. Any antidepressant will put your mood back, but can never take away the things that you have been feeling from your life. For that, you need to reach out to a psychologist. Suppose you've had a death in the family and you miss the person. What would a possibly medicine do? It will put your mood back on track, in the sense it will try and help you with your willingness to go seek therapy. But therapy is essential for you to talk about how much you miss this person, to talk about how much you really, that person really meant to you, or how much do you experience grief and loss and sadness and regret and these kind of feelings. So there is cure of it. However, it needs to be a combination of medication and therapy. It needs to be a combination of including family. It's a triad. See, you as a psychologist also, if there are young psychologists who are listening to this lecture, very importantly, when we treat someone, we put them back in track in their families. So if their families don't reciprocate with the same affection, love, care, then what has done? You can't do therapy in 1 hour a session, put them in a family which does not know what's happening to them. So for me, I always insist, though people come for individual sessions, but wherever possible, I always insist, whosoever you're staying with, please bring them over so we can at least have a general chat about how do we manage it at home, which is so essential. Popping up some medicines will not only give you long-term solutions, it's very temporary in nature.
Very
So
right.
yeah, so these are things which are important for us to understand. And to an extent, if there is somebody who's a let's say, you're studying in boards, you're having board exams, and that stresses you out, and you already have a genetic vulnerability, and it stresses you out so much that you find yourself depressed because you have a maths paper to come, and you have been stressing over the maths paper like no tomorrow. So if I only treat the child, I would be unfair to the child. I need to put the parents in the spot and say, okay, this is what your child feels. And so it's important that you take the responsibility that when I'm not there as a therapist, there is still some sense of motivation that's going through. So that kind of a collective format is required.
Certainly, it does require a very, very collective format. And I think parents, the family, the immediate loved ones play a very, very significant role. And believe it, I have seen people having such a different idea about depression. I have listened to people saying, "Ah, what is there to be depressed about? You have the best of the mobile, you have the best of the car, you're staying in the best of the home. What is there to be depressed about? Oh my goodness. The whole idea of depression is at a different footing. It is not the mobile, it is not the car, it is not the home, but I think the causes are more relationship oriented, more people oriented, more perception oriented. And rightly said by Dr. Sonakshi that the people, the loved ones around must understand that this particular person needs support, and your whole attitude will make a difference. So it's important that not only one person but the whole family takes the group therapy sessions to understand and support. And I certainly agree too that depression leads to a lot of chemical imbalance in the brain, So medication becomes mandatory. But medication alone is not the solution, because you keep taking medication, you keep bringing balance, but the causes will keep releasing the same kind of a stress. And again, you continue to have the same imbalance. So it would just not solve the situation. The moment you start experiencing stressful situations in life, you must do something about it. If you're anxious about something, you must talk your heart out. Just not ignore it and leave it there. As when you have a toothache, you run to a dentist. But when you have a stress, you just say, ah, it's all right, it'll be okay. So don't have that careless attitude, isn't it? I think that's very much needed. Dr. Sonakshi, I'm so happy to have you here. What are the treatment plans for depression? Let our audience understand that.
So, before I come to the treatment plan, I just wanted to actually sensitize the audience here. What you said is very, very valid here. Even a Nobel laureate who has lived all his life working can feel that the family has left him all alone. So even a Nobel laureate can fall into depression tomorrow. So it's amazing how people think something like this will not happen to them, and so they find it more difficult to accept that this has happened to them. Like, I'm a psychologist, but I'm very open to the idea that anything tomorrow can lead me to a stage where depression can come. So what am I going to do? So I have a set of people around me who will guide me, who will tell me, listen, this is what you can do to actually deal with depression. So, when as a psychologist, I know the methods and the tools to deal with depression, I still am telling you that there is a possibility, because I'm human enough to feel depression in any way. But my coping would be much stronger. So it's important that coping is better, cure is better than actually the problem. That's very important. So when it comes to treatment pattern, I believe three very important things really help you managing depression. One, be preventive in nature. If you realize that there is something which is not going in your favor, you find yourself mentally too preoccupied to handle things, start meeting a counseling psychologist, start meeting a counselor, or start talking to people around you who you think can really benefit you. Because sometimes people have the capacity to escalate your stress. So filter your people. Not everybody you know is a friend. So it's important you understand that there are people who can, it's like saying breaking the ice. Some people have the capacity to help you break the ice faster. So get to know them, meet a counseling psychologist. At any point of time, your counseling and clinical psychologist can guide you if there is a need for medication. Don't shy away from medication. It's important at times. It is important to restore your chemical imbalances. It is important to bring you at a stage where your willingness to experiment and talk and open yourself out there and do therapy is much higher. So this is an important step. Another thing which is very important, and lots of researchers have actually worked on this, is the role of exercise in dealing with depression. So any engagement outside of your work and home which can actually keep your physically and mentally agility can be improved is something which is very, very preferred. So depression can be, uh, I won't say cured, but managed if you have an exercise routine, if you have a good food routine, you have a good social support system, and at the same time you are not someone who's shy away to knock the door of a doctor and say, I think I need help. By the way, just to let you know, I think now people, the so-called taboo with depression is not as high, because I see a lot of people walking in to just say, hey, I don't think I was feeling well, I thought I'll check with you, can I have a chat with you? Which is amazing. I've not seen them in the last 8 years, but there has been huge change. I have so many students who would message me and say, hey ma'am, do you think you can take out a half an hour? I need something really, there's something on my mind for the last so many days, so maybe I am looking for a therapy session. And sometimes children come to me and say, I see a lot of behavioral changes in my mother. For example, the other day, I remember this one student who gave me a call and said, do you think it's odd that my mother left the her mobile phone in the refrigerator? So, I just found it very odd. And then I asked her, and she's been doing these, things which is very uncharacteristic of her. Like, she's somebody who's very careful, but she's very careless. She leaves her phone before she goes to work. Sometimes she would, forget her phone somewhere. And this is something to do with the phone. So, she's constantly, there's something which is stressing her. And then we do realize that she had a fear of losing her job, and she would constantly look at the emails on the phone to see whether she has lost her job or not. And so these are things. Now, as a child, you're able to observe your parent and say, okay, this is the problem. So now children bring us the parents and say, please speak to Sonakshi ma'am, or please speak to this ma'am or that ma'am, so that they can help you out through this. So observe the simple behavioral changes that you're doing. How are they different from your way of living in general? What is it that is keeping you so mentally preoccupied that sometimes you don't even realize that you're driving at 100, 80 speed, or 80 kilometers per hour speed, but you're driving at 120? And you know that you're going to get a fine, but your mind is not in sync with things like that. It's almost, I used to say that when I was in India to lots of my clients, that when you drive, you might be having a beautiful music playing in your car, you might just be enjoying everything going around you, but look at yourself in the rear view mirror and you'll find yourself like this. You're inherently stressed. But when we look from outside, there is music. You have a fancy BMW driving your road, your way, everything else. But when you see your face, you find it crinkled or you find it stressed. Why? Because driving inherently in India is stressful in nature. So if you face that stress on an everyday basis, what happens? One day, you don't want to go to work. You just don't want to drive. So these things happen. Observe yourself closely. Observe the changes yourself closely. Like, I remember one of the gynecologists, Dr. Seema from Aster, once told us, she said, breast cancer will never tell you I'm here. So don't shy away in observing your own breast to see if there is a lump. Most people will not do that. Likewise, don't shy away to observe that your mind is now stuck. And once you realize it, find an outlet. Do something about it. So reach out to the next possible appointment that you can get to a doctor who can help you sort out your mind. Please go ahead and do that. That will be my advice here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sonakshi, for sharing this detailed info with our people. Because, see, rightly said, when it walks in, it's like a thief coming bare feet into your house that you don't even realize it, and it enters. Because everything we try generalizing and saying it's all right if it is there, it's normal, things are going back. And one symptom which I must tell you is either you will have excessive sleep or you will have total lack of sleep. Either you start eating too much or you don't feel hungry at all. So, your normal routine is changed. So while you're going through depression, your body starts changing because it's trying to accommodate, it's trying to adjust. But unless you yourself support, you will not be able to get where you deserve to get. And today, I think it's been a very, very interesting discussion with our expert in the field, Dr. Sonakshi. Thank you so much for your presence, right from signs, the symptoms, the causes, to the treatment plan is with our audience. And if you see that happening to you or anybody in your loved ones, please do not hesitate and contact the professionals in the field. I think we've discussed enough to give you the indications that this is something which takes you to hopelessness. Helplessness to hopelessness is what depression would be defined as. And when you are helpless, you see that there may be a possibility, but when you are hopeless, you see no possibility around. So come on, my dear friends, this is just a very simple ignition stage. Identify and seek help, because this era is an era with a difference. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time with us. Believe it, I love discussing such things with you. And you are like being at home with my family. And I literally enjoyed this session. And I'm sure that our listeners must have enjoyed it equally. Thank you so much, Dr. Sonakshi.
Anytime, anything for you, Dr. Alka.
It is a pleasure. Thank you very much. Anybody has any question from the audience, feel free and ask the expert. Miss Batul, Miss Tamanna, Miss Shavi, Miss Sana, anybody feel free because we are here just for you. So if you have any question concerning depression or stress, feel free and ask now.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
Thank you so much for this session. It already answered a lot of questions I had in mind. My only question, sometimes what you explained about all the signs, it's not persistent, but it is regular once a month. Like I know that every month this time comes, I understand it, and I know it will stay for 2-3 days, and I just have to save myself these 2-3 days, and then things come back to normal. But then the next month it comes again. So I don't know if there is an explanation for that.
May I know, is that who's that, please? Can I get your name, please?
Yes, I am Batul. I am Batul. I am Zahra's mother.
No,
My Yeah.
uh, so Batul, I have something to share with you here. First of all, thank you. It takes a lot of courage to actually acknowledge that. As a practitioner, as a professional, I would ask you two things. One, I hope it doesn't coincide with your menstrual cycles, because if you have sadness or a feelings of
Yeah.
negative depression during a menstrual cycle, it is very
Yeah.
difficult to manage.
No. I at first I thought it's related to that, but
Hmm.
it's not. It
It's not.
it has no particular date or something.
No,
And
because
my cycles are regular. It's not about that.
okay, okay.
But this period of time where my husband also know that I know that you are in depression, and these 2-3 days I just have to leave you till I reconcile with myself. Yeah.
No, actually, see, the point that you have identified is very good. But as a professional, we have to make sure that there are things that go. There's a checklist of things, and we need to see whether those are. My second question to you, Batul, would be something on the lines of: are you conditioned to this? Are you conditioned to believe that it will happen 2 to 3 times in a month, or is it sometimes that there has been a skip and you have, or I mean, there has been a skip and things like that, or it is a persistent thing? And for how long has this been going on?
No, of course I don't expect it at all, and
Yeah.
I wish to be away from it only.
Mhm.
But when it comes, that time I identify like this exactly what you said: lost of interest in everything, lost of interest in anything what I do, too much tension regarding future, and hating everything I have like that. So of course I don't expect it, but when it comes, that time I realize, okay, see, this almost happened before a month.
Hmm.
Then I forget about it. Once I overcome it, then again it comes, and oh no, see, this again happened, like that.
And for how long has this been going on? Is there a pattern?
I don't know. I haven't recorded that much, but you can say maybe 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. See, because I'll tell you, what initially we would have thought of, or probably I would have checked, is not depression per se, but bipolarity. Sometimes it is more like a bipolar mood concern than actually depression. They're two different things.
Yeah.
However, 6 months is not a duration for me to counter it as a particular bipolar disorder in general. So I would just say that there are days that we probably have things where we feel like you said, fear of future, or maybe a lot of stress about things. Do you have any physiological symptoms? Does it come onto your body? Do you feel like you have body fatigue all day, you have headache, or some recurrent headaches? Do you have any physiological symptoms?
No, I don't know if crying without a reason is, is
Is that
that's the only
crying with
physical thing happen. Just crying without any particular reason.
Yeah. To be, to just tell you, probably I would have more questions, but the time is a little constrained here.
Yeah,
But
no
I'll tell
problem.
you something very important, Batul. For something to qualify as depression, there has to be more material to it. So this is not depression.
Hmm.
uh, what it possibly could be. So our mind has a certain capacity. So normalcy and pressure, When the pressure escalates to a level where it crosses our borders, it crosses the normalcy stage, we often find ourselves in a situation where we have, tears in our eyes. Or let's say you probably have symptoms where you feel too heavy. You could be one of the person who overthinks and metacognitively overthink. Metacognition means thinking over one's own thinking. So when you think at a rate like that, it's almost like driving at an 80 over 100, driving 100 over 80. So when your thoughts are so persistent, the body does not know where to contain them. So it just bursts out crying. It's almost like saying that when you've driven too fast and you step out of the car, you'll see the smell of the tire. You'll see the smell of the tire burning. That's exactly what it happens. However, there's a piece of advice for you, Batul. If it persists, and if you find yourself those 2 days to increase into 5, then a week and a 10-day, and it persistently goes on, reach out to either Dr. Alka or me. We will find out a solution for this. So it's good you have identified it, but for me, I would consider it at this point of time mental preoccupation. And I would not say it's either depression or bipolarity. It's just that your mind is so preoccupied with things, with let's say a lot of things, that your body, it's psychosomatic in nature. So psychological stress coming out in somata. Somata meaning body. Soma means body.
Okay.
So it's only a psychosomatic concern at the moment. However, if it escalates, it increases in days duration, if it actually starts to have more physiological concerns. For example, at any point of time, you see it starts to raise a heartbeat, reach out to a doctor.
Okay. Got it.
Okay,
thank you so much.
It's not depression.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Sonakshi. I think you handled it very, very well. Batul, I would just add on one thing, if anything is happening which brings tears regularly every month, 3 days or 4 days in your eyes, you need to take it seriously. Maybe now you are on the top of the Jabal Jaz and you're moving with the wind here and there. You need to address to this issue, which is troublesome, which happens consistently, regularly, for quite a sizable time. It may not be depression, but it can lead to depression if this is not handled. So I think high time you take it seriously and work towards it. Thank you very much for your question, asking this, because I know it requires a lot of effort because of the social taboo. People hesitate to call out, but I think you might have asked on behalf of many others who almost go through the same thing, but they don't really know what to do and where to go. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Very, very courageous, Batul.
Indeed a pleasure. Thanks a lot for your presence.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.